Hello, thank you for joining us for the next installment of our MPUG expert interview series. Today we have Ira Brown with us, a recognized Microsoft project expert and leader at Project Widgets. Ira's company specializes in creating add-on products and custom solutions for Microsoft Project and Project Online, helping organizations extend their project management capabilities to meet unique business requirements. With years of experience developing both commercial solutions and free tools for the project management community, Ira brings a unique perspective on how teams are actually using these tools in practice. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Ira, you've been in the project management field for quite some time. What initially drew you to specialize in Microsoft Project Solutions?
First, let me say thank you, Morgan, for inviting me to this session today. I'm really looking forward to a fun conversation. So how did this all start? Well, my very first job out of college, I worked for a company at the time called Shared Medical Systems, and they eventually were acquired by Siemens many years later. But I was kind of new to the workplace, and this was right around the time when PCs were first coming out, and the the company had a whole field organization that was implementing these software applications for hospitals, and my job was to support the field organization in the use of various tools that they used. And one of those tools was this project management software package. At the time, it was called Project Workbench, and it was for DOS. This was before there was even a thing called Windows. So that's how old I am. But that's where I first was exposed to project management software, and got pretty good at it, and became a trainer in Project Workbench. And then all of a sudden, this new platform came along called Windows, and everybody was issued a laptop computer, and it was running Windows. And instead of using all these other programs that we were using, like Lotus 123 and WordPerfect, and of course Project Workbench, which were all these kind of best in class programs at the time, we kind of moved everybody to all the different Windows and Office programs. So that's when everybody started using Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and this other tool called Microsoft Project. And that was kind of where I first was introduced to Microsoft Project. It was actually version 3.0 at the time, and it was their first Windows version. And after using it for a little while and getting pretty good at it, version 4.0 came out, and version 4.0 had something brand new built into it, which was called Visual Basic for Applications, or VBA. And this was the programming language that you could use to create custom solutions for Microsoft Project. And not only that, but every one of the Office applications, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all had this VBA built into it. So it was kind of like this common programming platform that you could use to not only automate Project, but maybe automate Microsoft Word or do something in PowerPoint, whatever it would be. So they just got me really interested in being able to create custom solutions that would save the company a lot of time and make people's jobs easier to perform. So instead of having to, manually launch a Word document and then manually put in information that was from your project, or creating a PowerPoint presentation that contained information from your project, maybe what we could do is just launch PowerPoint programmatically and then build your, a nice visualization of your schedule in PowerPoint just by clicking a button. So I just became really intrigued by that whole concept and kind of taught myself VBA. I really wasn't a programmer up until that point, but taught myself quite a bit. And then I went for a class, a 1 week class, and my instructor at the time taught me so much. I eventually, when I started my companies, I ended up hiring this instructor, and he actually just retired, but this goes back over 30 years ago, and so he ended up working for Project Widgets for many, many years. So anyway, that's how I got into this whole business, and I realized that the solutions that I was creating for this company at the time, I'm thinking maybe other companies might be interested in doing these kinds of things. So that's what got me interested in starting a consulting practice, and that's what led eventually to the creation of Project Widgets.
That's great. And I think that's one of the things that makes you and your company such a natural fit with MPUG. For those who know MPUG, for a long time, we used to be the Microsoft Project user group. And I think all of us are, moving into different things as time has gone on, but we've definitely been connected for quite some time in that realm as well. Um, I'm interested in hearing more in your experience. What are some of the most common challenges organizations face when they're implementing Microsoft Project on an enterprise level?
Yeah, I would say I think a common challenge that we see again and again is being able to establish standards and best practices and really implement those standards across the organization, and to have a governance process in place to enforce those standards. So, just give you some examples. We've implemented many enterprise project management solutions over the years, and some of those have been more successful than others. But the ones that have been the most successful would be where you had buy-in from within the organization, from the top down, where you know project managers were required to use the tools, and the business depended upon having plans that were up to date because they were generating reports that were going to management. So the data that was in the projects had to be up to date. So project managers needed to go in and update their plans on a consistent basis, and if that didn't happen, people would notice. And you don't want to be the only project manager whose data is incorrect going into that report that's going into senior management. So I would say the ones that have been most successful have been able to establish those standards and best practices, and what I like to call operationalizing Microsoft Project, because it's the way we do business, right? The companies where the project managers, well, they can use it if they want to. They don't really have to keep their plans up to date. Nobody's really monitoring it very much. There's not a really good governance process in place. Those are the ones that really where it never catches on, and they're not really effectively using the solution. So that's what I would suggest. Like, take some time to get that buy-in, and I think you'll have much more successful implementation.
Mhm. I thought of a question, um, which might be obvious, but maybe not to some of our listeners because I'm actually not sure of the answer myself. Is Project Widgets, you only work with Project Solutions, Microsoft Project, or you also work with other platforms?
Well, I mean, from the very beginning of Project Widgets, we were focused on Microsoft technologies and Microsoft Project. That was really our expertise, and that's really where we've built our reputation. But I'm actually at a conference this week in San Francisco, a Y Summits conference it's called. And I guess about 5 years ago, um, there was a conference in Philadelphia, also a Y Summits conference, and I gave a presentation. I was one of the keynote presenters and demonstrating all of our add-ons or widgets that we have for Microsoft Project. And many people came up to me at the end of the conference, at the end of my presentation, and they said, we really loved all those tools that you showed. Do you have a version of that that works with Smartsheet? And we didn't. And then people kept on approaching me, basically asking me the same question again and again. So many people were out there using Smartsheet, and we realized at that point that, well, you know what? Let's expand our horizons a bit. Let's start a Smartsheet practice. We're not giving up on the Microsoft Project. That's still our core, capability, and that's what we still spend most of our time doing. But we do have now, about 2 years ago, we established a Smartsheet consulting practice. So we have the person who runs that, Melissa McDonald, is an expert in Smartsheet and working in leading PMOs and even working in the life sciences as well, which is where we specialize. And so, yeah, we now have a Smartsheet practice. We have Smartsheet customers, and we also have started to migrate our widgets to Smartsheet as well. So one of our real popular widgets is one we call Snap It, which allows you to go in and capture a snapshot of what your project looks like at a particular point in time. So maybe when the project's approved by management, you go into Snap It and take a snapshot, or maybe if you're on this kind of this monthly reporting cycle with management, maybe every month you go in and capture a snapshot of your whole portfolio so that you can compare what does our portfolio look like at the end of May compared to what it looked like at the end of April. You can see all the variances just by comparing those snapshots. So it makes it really, really easy to do that kind of variance reporting. So we now have a version of Snap It that works with Smartsheet. Kind of is the same application, but just designed to work with Smartsheet. And we have a whole roadmap for migrating our other widgets as well. So I would say Smartsheet is the tool that, in addition to Project, where we're spending a lot of our time.
Gotcha. We actually know Melissa. She was part of a panel discussion that listeners and members of MPUG can go look up that talk. If you search Melissa's name, I believe it should come up on our website. She's wonderful.
We actually
And
just mentioned one
yeah.
thing. If you go back, I think it's somewhere in your library. I had actually jointly presented with Melissa at one of these MPUG sessions. I think it was called something like the Microsoft Project Smartsheet Deathmatch. And we
Something
were
like that.
basically going kind of head to head, talking about
Yeah.
the capabilities. I was representing the project side and she was representing Smartsheet. It was very friendly, and
Yeah.
but it was a fun presentation.
And
That's
now
out
you're
there
on the
somewhere.
same team, working together. That's great. Yeah. Um, So that was kind of what I was getting at before with MPUG's trajectory over time, just in the past couple years, starting to focus on education around these other tools,
Yeah,
because we recognize that not everyone is on project anymore, but many, many businesses, from what I hear, many enterprises especially, are still wanting their PMs to use project.
yeah.
Um,
I'll just mention one more thing. We have a another client right now that they're primarily using Microsoft Project, but there are a couple of groups within the organization that are using Smartsheet, and they don't want to tell these folks they can't use Smartsheet. They want them to use the tool they're comfortable with. So what we're now doing is we're developing this integration between Project Online and Smartsheet. So you could have a version of the plan sitting in Smartsheet and a kind of a shadow version of the plan living in Microsoft Project. Doesn't even have to be the entire plan. It could be a subset of the plan, maybe like the most important reporting tasks that are needed. And then we kind of synchronize the two plans on a certain frequency. So that way you can stick with the tool you're most comfortable with and still have a version of that plan that lives in Microsoft Project, or perhaps go in the other direction.
I love that. That sounds very, very helpful. So, in case anybody's interested in that, they can follow Project Widgets, get on your newsletter list to get updates about that tool.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we'd love
Great.
to hear from people.
Wonderful. Just want to make sure we mention that because that might have put some bells off in some folks' heads. But let's talk a little bit more about projects, since that is mostly probably who we're talking to. So, with your background in creating these custom solutions, what do you think Microsoft Project does really well out of the box, and where do you see organizations typically needing more customization?
I think I kind of view Microsoft Project as a really solid project management platform that has really strong capabilities around managing a schedule, being able to analyze your critical path, creating a network diagram, um, and it has a similar look and feel to a lot of the other Office applications like Excel, for example. So people, just to get the basics, it's not a steep learning curve for people. But when it comes to performing certain functions, like maybe you want to be able to create a master schedule that has sub projects embedded within it. Yes, you can do that, but it can be a little bit challenging. It goes beyond the basics. There's a lot of advanced features in Microsoft Project that require a bit of a higher level of expertise to be able to get good at really using that feature. And then sticking with that master schedule topic, to be able to have inter-project dependencies from a task in one project to a task in another project. Again, you can do it, but can be a little bit challenging if you're not an expert in Microsoft projects. So I guess what we try to do is we try to create these solutions that just make Microsoft Project much easier to use for people. We can't get Project to do things that it can't do on its own, but what we do is we kind of create these intuitive user interfaces to make it much easier to build a master schedule or to create the inter-project dependencies. In fact, there's one I'd like to tell you a little bit more about that. It's I've been doing this for so long, but every once in a while we come up with something new that we've never thought about before, and like to this day, it's pretty exciting for me. But um, there's really no way within Microsoft Project to build a master schedule from a single template. You certainly have templates in Microsoft Project, but you use a template to build one project. But what if you wanted to kind of templatize the ability to create a master schedule where you could actually have the master schedule with all of its sub-projects and all of its inter-project dependencies built for you in an automated fashion from a single template? Well, we recently actually came up with that capability, and we're able to use one template, and then within the one template, you basically tag the tasks that you want to go to a particular sub-project. So, if I stick with a life sciences example, you might have a master schedule where you have a clinical portion of the master schedule and a regulatory portion of the master schedule and a commercial portion of the master schedule. So you can tag the activities using custom fields. Like I want this group of tasks to go to the clinical plan and this group of tasks to go to the regulatory plan, et cetera. And it's all happening within a single template. So then through our automation, you basically say, okay, I want to build a new master schedule, and it actually takes that single template, and based upon how you've tagged those tasks, it will create the clinical plan, it will create the regulatory plan, it'll create the commercial plan as individual projects, then embed them within the master schedule automatically, then automatically build the inter-project dependencies based upon how those tasks were linked together in the template. So it makes it super easy to do that, and it's almost mind-blowing. It's almost like you can't even believe that because I mean, we actually compared. It could take many hours to do what I just described, whereas the tool can do it in a matter of a minute or two, and it's pretty
Wow,
impressive. So those
that
are just
is
some examples of like taking things that are tedious, time-consuming, error-prone, difficult to learn, um, and just turning it into a widget and making it easy for anybody to be able to do that. So that's what I kind of get the most gratification from, is creating these kinds of solutions that save people time.
yeah. And that makes me curious, what is the typical process for coming up with an idea for a widget? Is it just as someone who spent a lot of time with project, you and your team have ideas? Are you getting requests or talking to organizations that are having specific problems? How does that work?
Well, just about every one of our widgets that we have, I wish I could say I dreamt them all up myself, but that's not true. Almost everything that we've come up with has stemmed from working with a client, and they present us with, like, wouldn't it be great if Microsoft Project can do this, or is there anything that could be automated to make this easier? So I'll give you an example. This goes back many years ago, working with a pharmaceutical company right around the time we were first getting started, and they said, is there any way we have the need to do these what if scenarios in Microsoft Project? Is there any way that you might be able to create some automation, like create a widget to make it easier to manage what if scenarios? So we got thinking about it. We kind of figured out what we wanted the requirements to be. We worked with the client to figure that out, and then we turned that into a widget. So that's what eventually led to what we call our scenario builder widget. And to this day, it's one of our most popular widgets. And we've implemented it many different clients. And what ends up happening is that other client says, this is really great, but is there a way that you could add this feature to it? Well, yeah, there is. So now we improve the widget, and And now all of our other clients who've implemented the scenario builder widget now benefit from that new feature. So we're constantly evolving and improving. And usually the ideas for doing that come from our clients, come from the suggestions that we hear from our clients. Like one of the things, let's give one quick example. There's a lot of organizations that use a product called One Pager Pro, made by a company called Chronicle Graphics, and we many years ago thought it would be a good idea if we integrated our products, our add-ons, with One Pager Pro. So we formed a partnership with those guys. They've been great to work with, and now many of our widgets just have this built-in integration where we seamlessly can create, these really nice visual reports that it just work with our widgets. So you still have to have a license for One Pager Pro, but and that came from also just our customer. We saw that our customers were using that product, and we really liked its capabilities. So we said, let's just integrate and let them use the tools that they're using, and we'll just leverage those capabilities as well.
That's great. And it is so exciting when things work together and you find new ways to build something that makes this work better and that work better. That's really, that sounds like a lot of fun. So
I do still have a lot of fun at my job. Yes, that is really true.
that's wonderful. So I know you do offer a lot of free widgets on your website. And I'm going to ask a slightly different question about this than what I planned to ask you. I'm just really curious, whether it's a free one or not, do you have a favorite widget that you've built?
That would be like asking me, do I have a favorite child? I don't, they're all my children, but depending on the, certain times I have, I do particularly appreciate, like, I'll tell you one that is one of my favorites right now. Because it's been around a while, but we recently just greatly enhanced it. So it's almost like a brand new widget. We call it the project quality widget. And the idea is, again, it came from an idea that, our client said, is there any way you can build something to sort of analyze the contents of the schedule to make sure that all the right tasks are there and people are building the project correctly with the right dependencies and that kind of thing. So we created this project quality widget that allows a project manager to click a button and it analyzes their schedule to ensure that it's adhering to all of the organizational standards that have been put in place by the company. And then we've created a way to configure what those standards are. So maybe there could be 10 or 15 or 20 validation rules that this widget is checking for, and the user can run it themselves. It will show them how they're doing, and then it makes it easy for them to fix the issues that it finds. So for example, let's, as a best practice, generally all tasks within a project should have a predecessor. So the widget checks to see if any of the tasks are missing a predecessor. If it finds that there are tasks that are missing a predecessor, then we put you in a view that allows you to then fix that problem. And then you can just relaunch the widget, and then it'll run the check again to see if you fixed all the problems. So by the time you're done, hopefully you fixed all the problems. So that was a great way to solve that problem for an individual project manager. But then someone said, like, well, what if I run the whole PMO? I want to see how we're doing across all of our projects. So that led us to kind of extend the project quality widget to be able to look across multiple projects, write all of this data to a SQL database that we have in the cloud, and then be able to produce a Power BI report that I can then run to be able to take a look at the quality of all of the projects in the portfolio. And I can see in the form of a pie chart all the different quality issues and how many, gives me a count of each one so I can see which ones are the biggest problem. I can then put an initiative in place, maybe through training or whatever it may be, to try to solve that problem. And then every time I run this enterprise version of the tool, I can actually see how we're improving over time, because it actually shows me the history of a particular issue that it finds over time. So maybe if you had a lot of problems, and then you can see as you put this initiative in place, you have fewer and fewer problems, and you can see the results of your initiatives to try to improve the quality of your schedule. So that one was just a really cool one, and I'm pretty proud of that one. So
Sounds great.
yeah, so that's the one that I would have to say for today is my favorite. Tomorrow I'll
Thank
probably have a
you.
different answer.
Thank you for finding an answer for my question, even though it was uncomfortable to choose.
And
And
that's
that
not a free
answer,
one, by the way. That one's not one of our free ones, but
gotcha. Yep. I definitely wanted to mention that there are free widgets on projectwidgets.com, so please feel free to check that out and start using some of these tools. And you can also get in touch with Ira and his team there if you have a specific request or a problem you're trying to solve. And I also would love to mention that, as we said, Ira, you've been an MPUG contributor for quite some time. So for MPUG members, we have a pretty extensive selection of things that you've made for us before, whether it be articles or presentations and lessons that you've given. Um, and I was reminded when you were talking about that widget that visualization is a big part of what you do. Um, and I think that's really helpful for especially people that need to be, communicating with stakeholders who are not in the weeds with you, and you need to give these nice visual. Not only is it helpful to see visuals on where you need to focus your attention and problems you're trying to solve, but communicating that as well. So that's something that I think you all do really well. We have way more things to talk about than time today, so we may even need to have a follow-up conversation at some point. Um, if
I would
there's
love to do another one of these. This was so much
Yeah,
fun.
we only got through a third of the questions, so we have plenty to talk about. But while we're on the topic of things that you've done in the past for MPUG and the relationship that we've had for some time, I just wonder if you could speak a little bit to how being part of the MPUG community has enhanced your professional journey, what you find that we do well, what you think what the value is for MPUG members.
Yeah, I mean, I really love MPUG. I've been part of MPUG even before Project Widgets, like going back 30 years. And in fact, when I first got involved with MPUG, we had local chapters. I don't think that's a thing anymore, but
Not
there was
anymore.
the Philadelphia chapter and there was the DC chapter, and we had meetings where people would we frequently we sponsored those meetings, and we'd bring in some food, and you had people giving live presentations, and it was just a lot of fun, and we typically did that maybe once a month. So those were the early days of MPUG. So because you got to meet people face to face and from many different companies and many different industries, and you just learned a lot, and that was a great opportunity for us to be able to also um, showcase a lot of our capabilities. That's how we found a lot of our customers over the years. To this day, I have customers that I originally met because I was giving an MPUG webinar and somebody liked what I was talking about, and the next thing you know, they're engaged with Project Widgets, and we're implementing some of our solutions for that company. So it's been great for me to get exposure. One story that comes to mind, which is kind of funny for me, is I've been doing the webinars for a lot of years, and then every once in a while I'll do these conferences. And one time I was at this conference that Microsoft was putting on. It was a Microsoft project conference, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people that came to the conference, and we had a booth, and I remember like this person is slowly walking towards my booth, and she sees my name, and she's like, "Oh my God, are you Ira Brown from?" It was interesting reaction, but it was almost like she was meeting, I don't know, but it was fun, because I guess I just been out there for a long time, and I guess she was excited to meet me, so that was quite flattering, and it was just an example of how many people see these webinars and really appreciate all the content that you guys put out there. So I've just really enjoyed the relationship we've had for so many years.
Yeah, well, we certainly appreciate you as well and your whole team. We actually just earlier had somebody from Ira's team presenting our live event from today, and we're excited to continue partnering together and bringing everything that you do to our audience and vice versa. So we appreciate you.
Sounds great. This was again so much fun. Thank you very much for inviting me to this today, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Sounds good. Yes, we'll be in touch.
Okay.
Right.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us today, everyone. We'll see you next time.